Quarteng, he of the prodigious package, is attempting a double move, painting Rachel Reeves as the author of a tax and spend spiral, while rehabilitating his own reputation by contrasting a slow-grinding market squeeze today with the sudden shock of his 2022 mini-budget. It's shrewd politics, partial economics, and a reminder that number 10 and number 11, that relationship can determine markets as much as spreadsheets. In an interview this morning, he warned, in fact, in an article this morning, he warned of a doom loop, higher taxes that depress activity, which then require still higher taxes, and predicted a wealth tax before the end of this parliament. He singles out the national employer national insurance tax as the hiring drag and argues that more tax rises would drive capital and talent abroad. Markets are already nervous. 30-year gilt yields have pushed to about 5.70 to 5.72%, the highest since 1998, while sterling has slid. This is not a flash crash. It's a slow grinding repricing of UK risk that tightens the Chancellor's room for manoeuvre ahead of the autumn budget. That alone gives Quarteng's warnings an audience. Quarteng was also exploiting the optics of Starmer's micro reshuffle. The Prime Minister has pulled Reeves' deputy, Darren Jones, into number 10 as Chief Secretary to the PM, appointing Minouche Shafik as Chief Economic Advisor and installing Dan York-Smith as Principal Private Secretary. Downing Street says this strengthens the Starmer-Reeves partnership. Well, the political read is much simpler. Number 10 has put the Treasury on a short lease, and Keir Starmer is holding the purse strings. Markets have noticed. Quarteng now narrates the 2022 saga as a cautionary tale about sacking chancellors and losing control of the fiscal story. He is right about personal risk. He is wrong to imply like-for-like conditions. The Liz Truss spike was a policy shock with OBR sidelined. Today's pressure reflects global duration sell-offs, plus UK-specific doubts about fiscal strategy, welfare control and medium-term growth. The level of yields, though, is now higher than during the Truss week. That is the politically painful headlines. We have borrowed more now than we did under Liz Truss. So Rachel Reeves is Liz Truss worse. But we might have, when we looked at Kwasi Kwarteng's prodigious package and we were told to admire this by Liz Truss, we giggled. When it comes to Rachel Reeves, we weep. Because signals matter. Sudden institutional pivots or the hint of a Starmer-Reeves rift widen risk completely, and markets price uncertainty more than ideology. Business side payroll taxes are passed on through wages and prices. The tax on employers bites employees. In a weak productivity cycle, they're particularly costly. And Quarteng's diagnosis is orthodox, even if his rhetoric is theatrical. Why would you expect any less? Mobility is higher than in the 1970s, so the wealth flight is easier. That doesn't make a wealth tax impossible, but design and thresholds matter more than slogans. And there is no growth plan to cling to. Warning about a doom loop is not the same as proposing supply-side reforms with credible costings and sequencing. And Quarteng has nothing to offer Rachel Reeves except, a warning that we've been here before, and he was responsible for it. The Truss-Quarteng mini-budget failed because the numbers didn't add up and the institutions were bypassed. And that legacy still shapes market hair trigger reactions to UK fiscal news. So in a way, yes, it's worse now than it was in Liz Truss's premiership. But it's only worse now because of Liz Truss. So we can say, oh no, look, you've done worse. And she has. Rachel Reeves is a disaster, but she's only able to be a disaster because Liz Truss got there first. Liz Truss set the standard, and she set the waves in motion that mean it's been very difficult to follow her. Rishi Sunak did very well to restabilise the boat, but Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves have turned it upside down. So Reeves set rules to have debt falling by 2029 to 30 and to fund day-to-day spending from revenue. With 30-year yields at late 1990s high and the pound weaker, her thin headroom is shrinking completely. Multiple credible houses now assume tax measures in the autumn, not because she wants them, but because the maths is closing in. And anyone who has worked that number 10, number 11 corridor knows there's no real wall between number 10 and 11. When the Prime Minister builds an in-house economics unit, the Treasury bristles. When a Chancellor's deputy is moved across the landing, the Treasury bristles twice. If that spills into briefing wars, markets will punish both. Starmer says the relationship is stronger. The test will be, one, the coherent budget trail, not two competing narratives. But the reality is this is the Prime Minister pushing his Chancellor. This is the Prime Minister dictating because his Chancellor is too stupid and too weak to know what she's doing. That is his assessment. She and many others are saying Starmer isn't capable of holding this ship steady either. It's desperation. I think you have to ask, is there a grown-up answer to Quarteng? If Reeves wants to beat the doom loop charge, she must show three things by October to November. One, a path to restraint that is not theatrical austerity, multi-year, specific and audited, with welfare reform focused on fraud, better assessments and back-to-work incentives rather than arbitrary cuts that collapse in Parliament. Two, a targeted pro-investment package, full expensing stability, accelerated planning for energy and housing, faster grid connections and a serious skills pipeline that tilts the tax mix towards growth rather than rate hikes alone. And three, there has to be institutional reassurance. She would need to lock back in the OBR, respect the bank, avoid an off-balance sheet gimmick or set of gimmicks. Markets need metronomic predictability after a year of U-turns. I'm not sure she can actually produce number three. I think she's going to struggle with number two, and I think number one is well beyond her. Quarteng understands the politics here. Sidelining the Chancellor means sacking the Chancellor, and that simply means buying Starmer a countdown, as indeed Liz Truss bought herself a countdown when she sacked Quarteng. Truss lasted 6 days after sacking Quarteng. It is possible to sack your Chancellor and survive. Thatcher did it. But Starmer is not a Thatcher. And Starmer has no intention of repeating that play. He has re-centralised economics in number 10 instead. If yields ease and the budget story hangs together, Quarteng's doom loop will look like some sort of prophecy from a mad prophet. But if not, his criticism will harden into consensus. Quarteng is canny. I may have mocked him hugely in the past, but I've always respected his writing and his intellect. Attack the tax, rise optics, frame a flight of wealth risk, and insinuate a split between Starmer and Reeves. Yeah. The counter is press line. It's a budget that proves discipline and growth can coexist. Right now, the market meter is unforgiving and higher than in the Truss week, which makes the autumn choices both narrower and more consequential. Quarteng, of course, is absolutely right. He's bang on the money. If other people can see his prediction of doom, maybe if number 10 and number 11 can see his prediction of doom, and indeed they can read it, they don't have to open the I newspaper, maybe they can avoid it, but I think they are locked in that helter-skelter down the river into the sea of disaster.